All right, we are back, everybody. Welcome back to the Rice Report. We are going to dig right into the jobs market today because this is an area of contention. This is something that the government tells us everything is fine, but our eyes and our ears deceive us, apparently, because most of the job market right now seems to be a bit of a calamity. And I think that's probably going to get worse as AI is embedded throughout the country. It's an expected consequence of automating everything. But today we're going to bring back on one of my friends and the person I turn to for this information first and foremost, Amanda Goodall, the job chick on Twitter, and also has a Substack. So at the end, we'll go through all that stuff and how you can follow her. But Amanda, what's going on? How are you?
Oh, thanks for having me back on here. This is great. I can't believe we haven't spoken for months on this, but
I
there's been
know.
so much happening. And has the job market gotten better? It has not. So, it's crazy to watch what's happening with earnings calls. And I mean, that's really the side I sit on with all of it and looking at the workforce. None of it matches up. It is a complete disconnect to what companies are spinning as their narrative and who's actually getting hired, really, when you go down into it. So yeah, I mean, there's some sectors that are doing okay, and there's some sectors that are struggling just a little bit. And but man, the economists out there, and we talked a little bit before, the economists out there just like, oh no, it's great. It's not great. It's not great. No matter how you look at it, it's not doing fantastic.
Yeah, let's walk through the facts and figures. There was one that came out today about how jobs postings are down like 8%. And you uncovered the funny thing about Amanda, if you're not following hers, she puts out information and 48 hours later, all the big publishers take her information and take credit for the data she's uncovered. So before we walk into this, ghost posting, ghost listing thing, which is very real. I mean, it's PR and all that kind of stuff. Tell everybody what you do for a day job. Like, how do you earn your money? Because I think it's important to understand just how deep in this space you actually are.
Yeah, 20 years been dealing with workforce. Started with the career side and then realized, wow, there's so much more going on behind the scenes. And that just intrigued me. I'm a data nerd. So I started diving into that. So, what I do, I'm a workforce intelligence strategist. So I go through everything. And I primarily work with investors, different funds, and some corporates as well that are just like, wait a minute, how did you know this about us? When they find out, and they're reading my Substack and whatnot. But it's crazy to kind of look at it and just realize what the markets, no matter which market you're talking about, which markets, they have no idea what's actually going on. So I really focus on the behind the scenes signals that we can see. And yes, I will take credit for, that whole thing about coming out before everybody else, because we do. I have mainstream media journalists contacting me going, "How do you know this? How can we prove this before?" And I'm like, "You have to trust me on this one because I can see it." And then, some trust me and most are like, "I can't do it. My editor said no." And then, 2 days later, like you said, it does hit mainstream media. All of the details are out there, and it's astonishing to me who misses it. But I deal with the job seekers. I deal with, but I really love focusing on the investing side because I do. My favorite thing to do is actually predicting layoffs like 3 to 6 months out,
Yes.
because that has such a major pull to what the market's going to do. I mean, and right now, any layoffs are announced, the market's going to go up. So you want to be in that trade, right? So,
Yeah.
looking at it from that side, I find that really fun. I've actually just launched, Insider Edge Live, which is going to be a Monday through Friday daily show with me, where you're actually going to hear all of this stuff, kind of where I go down the rabbit holes and things like that, to find out what we need to do, how we need to trade, and it's all based on workforce signals. I'm not a financial person.
Mhm.
I'm not Wall Street. I actually probably couldn't even deal with all the charts that they do at all. But the workforce does drive what is actually happening, not the narrative that's out there. So, between that, between speaking, between doing any kind of consulting and advising with different companies, that's how I get to do what I do. But I love it because I get paid to go dig dirt and find out actually what's going on. So this is
And you
fun
find it
stuff.
all, like
I
like
do.
the disclosures that you have right now are, I have watched for probably a year now, and I have seen 2, 4, 6 months in advance predictions you were making coming true. And of course, you won't reveal your sources, but you're very data driven. You also have your ear to the ground, which is important because data can be manipulated. Rumors can be manipulated as well, but you're dealing with the actual people seeking jobs and the employers hiring them. And I think that getting source information directly from the actual spot of contention is very important. So let's walk through this most recent post that came out today. I think it was Unusual Whales shared it out today that job postings are down. I think it said 8%. If it wasn't 18%. This is just job listings. Explain to us what's really happening in this market.
You know, the job, okay, we have to remember first that job postings, like anything that we see on the job boards, Indeed, LinkedIn, that is intent to hire, that's actually not hiring. That doesn't actually mean there's headcount growing. So what we do see is a lot of corporates right before earnings or right after earnings, you're going to see a big push of postings going up because they want to share that narrative, whatever they're saying. Oh, we're going to grow with this. Oh, we got this contract, whatever. This is what we're doing, or this is how we're saving money. So you're going to see like a change in the types of orgs that they are hiring. So maybe they'll shrink their engineering team because they didn't get a contract or they just need to do a cost savings or things like that. So, you are going to see all these big things. What we are seeing with job listings decreasing, companies are not hiring. Well,
Right.
they're not, well, let's put it this way. They're not hiring in the United States. Okay. We are seeing so much go offshore. And I know everybody talks about the H-1B and maybe we'll get into that later.
Absolutely, we will.
That is a massive distraction of what's going on. That is a teeny fraction of what's going on. You take Amazon, for instance, massive company, right? Global. And yes, they have to have global headquarters as well. But overall, they have about, 1.5 million, and that's a very big rough number right now of total headcount. About a third of that is just offshored workers. And I don't mean like
500,000 people in foreign countries.
yes. And I don't mean like net new operations they're setting up only in the areas. This is specifically offshored work. Things that we used to have here in the United States. They've completely moved offshore. So just that's one company. And yes, okay, that is one of the biggest companies. I'll hand it to you.
Sure,
But
sure.
it's still you look at that scale and you multiply it. Let's just take the Mag 7 alone. They have that same record, and we can watch how the scale of work here in the United States is decreasing completely. So these numbers, 8%, I don't buy it. I think it's way bigger than that. Companies are just not hiring like they used to. And we have to look at that 8% overall. Let's just go with that number because that's what they put out.
Yeah.
Let's look at that. How many of those are actually real? How many of those do they actually want to fill? And how much is just for that PR spin that they're giving their shareholders to make them happy, to make them more money? And that is what we're seeing. I know it sounds really conspiracy, but it's not.
No, it's true.
You
I've talked to many executives
yeah.
and many people within companies that say, yes, we list job listings for jobs we don't intend to hire for. I have heard this myself. So that is not a conspiracy. It is a PR play to make the appearance of job growth when it isn't there.
Yeah, absolutely. And we see this. We see this from the big ones. And I talk about Nvidia a lot because Nvidia is this weird, I don't know, there's something
It's
going
an
on
enigma.
there.
Yeah.
It is an enigma. That's the word I was looking for. You read my mind. It is something odd. They're not driven by layoffs, right? I think it was in 2019, Jensen was just like, we're not going to do layoffs. And especially after COVID hit, he was just like, we're not going to do this. We're going to figure this out. But you do still see mass exits. Okay. It's just
Yes.
not in the news. And attrition, okay, they have a lot of people, but that is a heavy amount of attrition and churn for somebody that would want to work at the largest AI chip company in the world. Why would you leave? Pay is
Right.
good, right? So there is something going on with all of that. And we do see more offshoring, and we are seeing different, factories and warehouses and all kinds of stuff being set up. And again, this is just one company, but you multiply this across the board. And it's just, I don't know, it's mind-boggling when you get into the numbers. But I'm starting to go through them, and I'm not a math girl. I am not a math girl.
You're
So
the
I'm
job
going
chick.
through yeah, exactly. I'm sticking everything through Python. I'm actually getting things to calculate properly so that my models are right. But I'm looking at the numbers, I'm like, no, Python got it wrong, and then I have to pull all the numbers again just to double check. And I'm just like jaw drop on the floor. And then I usually walk into the room and just spout off about it to my husband. Poor guy. He hears all the stuff before I start publishing it. But
It's probably a good investor, though.
crazy. It's good. It's the numbers that you actually want to hear. And, it's what the markets really should be driven by. And, at the end of the day, when you deal with labor suppression, like we're seeing, that is just there to deal with, like, credit spreads and things like that. And, there's a lot of issues afoot with a lot of the big companies. And
Walk us through
matter
labor
of time.
suppression, because that immediately gets called conspiracy theory by any sort of CNBC person. Like, walk us through labor suppression, what that means.
Yeah, I mean, what happened? Okay, let's just talk about the Fed. The Fed cut, and everybody was like, "Yay, now there's gonna be jobs." Well, historically, yes, there have been jobs in the past. Especially after like GFC, and all the times that we do see cuts, typically. And I'm going to go back 10 years, okay? Because I think even just going 5 is too close. When you go back, yes, jobs were there. There was job growth. We didn't see. Yes, we had offshoring, but we didn't see the mass amounts that we do now. Well, with labor, suppression, with all of this, companies are not having to do that. They're focused on scaling margins, not scaling teams. So, the more that the rates are getting cut, well, number one, that hurts the consumer. Number two, companies just go, wait a minute. So I can borrow money. I can do this. I can maybe build more AI and automation and give that push. Maybe I can put that money into offshore. Maybe I can do that and just, hire a bunch of H-1Bs for the next round, right? So we have a lot of issues. They're thinking about how to use this for their benefit, but there's no hiring going on for us. We are seeing that suppression going on. And then you just start that spiral, because at the end of the day, when wages are coming down and we aren't seeing that growth, and even the unemployment rates that they're spitting out right now, that's mostly part-time work, especially out of the last one. Who is affording to live under this inflation level? That's what
No
I
one.
want to know. And it's just swept under the rug, and it's crazy to watch this, but we will keep seeing the labor market shrink. We are not going to go back to what it was, because the companies don't need that. They're
That's right.
finding other ways to deal with this. Where that leaves us, wow. Okay, there's a million and one conspiracies you can drive down that one. But it's frustrating to watch. And and this is not just the US. This is a global scale. We are seeing this in every country. And I did a thing about Germany the other day. They've seen 125,000 cuts announced, not all finished this year. Some are like, oh,
And
finished by
that's just in
27.
manufacturing, right?
That is just in the manufacturing industrial side.
And they are the
So,
industrial powerhouse of Europe.
yeah, absolutely. So that's major, because and a lot of people are just like, that's Germany. That's Germany's problem. No, it's actually not, because it is a complete knock-on effect. When manufacturing and industrial goes down from such a powerhouse as Germany, you're going to see that hit everywhere. We're already seeing that in the auto industry here, for instance, and the layoffs and the temporary layoffs due to supplies. We're going to start seeing this really trickle down throughout aerospace as well. Which is not great news for Boeing and Airbus, who have all of these mandates and contracts to build all these planes. So this is thousands and tens of thousands of jobs, and it really all stems because one factory in Germany laid off 30,000 by 2027. All of it spiraling. And a lot of companies are going to look at that, and it's not going to hit in 2027 when everybody is finally laid off. It's
Right.
going to hit now, because all companies globally are looking at that going, oh my gosh, I have to cut back, because we're about to enter a period. So they have to, preserve what they can right now, so that they can stay afloat and keep moving forward. So it is going to mean heads, because at the end of the day, it's a lot easier to, you can't restructure debt very fast, but you can cut heads. And at that
Yeah.
point, that's what we are going to start seeing. And again, this is global. This is not just the US, but big problems.
Well, let's stay focused here, because if I read this right, and I may have read it wrong, the BLS is basically going dark. Like, I just saw that announcement. The BLS is saying something's wrong here, and we're going dark, which to me is an admission of guilt. I've been calling out these jobs numbers and the CPI for years, and been called all kinds of names for it.
Mhm.
CPI is a joke. That's an absolute joke. Inflation's much higher than 3%. It doesn't. If you can manipulate the numbers for
Mhm.
political gain, you're going to manipulate the numbers for political gain. That's just how the world actually works, outside of puppy dogs and rainbows. But the BLS has been doing this for a very long time too.
Mhm.
Over 2 million jobs, I believe, in the last 3 years have been readjusted. That, oh yeah, we made a mistake. There weren't actually all those jobs created or people hired. That was actually just our mistake. That
Mhm.
mistake is very devious in nature, and it will have ripple effects, because
Mhm.
eventually consumer spending drops if people don't have jobs, and the market does see a negative impact from that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, BLS numbers, my thoughts on those.
Yeah, oh yeah,
They're
they're
not
complete
friendly.
garbage. Yeah, they're garbage.
So, yeah, revisions. Okay, they've always happened. This isn't new, but these numbers coming out are ridiculous. This 2 million over the past couple of years. Come on. I can see the workforce out. If I can see it, what I'm doing, what are they doing? You
Right.
know, and I saw that the Chicago Fed, put out their new, labor tracking thing yesterday, I believe it was. And
That they created. Yeah.
okay, I mean, I looked at those charts and I was like, what is this telling me? Exactly.
Nothing.
It's a whole lot of nothing. So I don't know what their game plan is. And, it's funny. I have a lot of people like, comment on my stuff on X. They're just like, Department of Labor, you need to hire Amanda and make her the new BLS chief. I don't want that job.
Nope.
Ironically, Department of Labor started following me yesterday. So maybe they're starting to listen. That would be amazing, right?
Did they really?
Um, yeah, yeah. So I don't know. Maybe I'm be on the watch list. Not in
Hey,
a good
that's two
way,
of us here on this video. Perfect.
right? So, it's good that there's a conversation, but it doesn't matter. It's like we're just completely butting heads because
Right.
nothing's changing in the administration, and it never has. Let's just be honest.
Yeah.
There's never been major things. It doesn't matter who's in office. There is always that push and pull, and it is optics at the end of the day. And it's like, what do we need it? What do we need to make it say? Okay,
N-
then that's what it is. And
Nothing can
it,
stop it. You
it's
can vote as
frustrating.
hard as you want. Nothing will stop this bureaucracy.
Yeah,
Nothing will stop it. It
yeah,
is not, you can't even blame it on Trump, Biden, Obama, anybody you want to blame it on.
yeah,
This is how the system works. And a president can only do so much in a day. Now, on
exactly.
the other hand, we are hearing direct contradictions. So one of them we heard the other day was that wage growth is growing is the fastest it has in 60 years. Now, when I looked at the study, it was based on 1 month. So 1 month they extended out to a year to create this statistic that made people very happy. What is
Mhm.
actually happening with wage growth right now?
We do see it in a few areas, and I know.
Well,
You
AI
know,
is certainly getting paid like crazy. Like we know that.
I know, they're powerhouses. I know Trump mentioned the other day, and I don't know who all brought it up. With the administration, just like oh, blue collar workers are seeing $500 more per year on average. Okay, that's not much. And just to be the sarcastic so and so I am, I was like, okay, let's figure out the craziest things we can buy with $500 because at the end of the day, with this inflation going on, that is nothing. You can buy
It's $40 a
1,500,
month.
yeah, 1,500 packets of ramen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's where we're at. Okay, cool. Now I feel fantastic. It's frustrating to watch that. Overall industry wage growth, it's not there. You see it very, very pocketed. Certain trades, certain laborers might have a small amount, but even if it is that full 500, like you said, that's $40 a month.
Yeah. It's
What
nothing.
is that gonna do? What is that gonna do? And
And on that post, there were
Mhm,
almost 4,000 comments on there. I read through almost all of them, and I would say half of them are from blue collar workers saying, I'm not getting paid anything extra. I'm not getting any extra hours. Now, that's a small sample set based on the entire countries, to be fair. Like 4,000 is not comparable to 330 million,
mhm,
but it's a pretty large amount of people who are angry enough to comment on a White House post that
mhm,
that data is not true. And we should acknowledge, we shouldn't be, for me, political parties are nothing more than a lesser evil choice. You join a political party, you agree with 80% of what they say, but you have to agree with 100% when you vote. It's a
mhm,
lesser evil, not a greater good. And I think that when we get to the greater good, we look for truth and transparency in everything that we do. Everything that we see should be transparent and true. And the fact of the matter is, I don't believe any of their stats. Uh, I believe most of your stats because you come with sauce, like everything that you have on there, you're putting the article, the data, the chart, everything. But
mhm.
again, we have to trust that that chart's true, right? We have
Yeah.
no real transparency, yet the world operates in this world like everything that they say is absolute and fundamental, and that's just not the truth. So wage growth, I will debate anyone that wage growth isn't increasing because I can simply look at the world I live in. I can look
Mhm,
at the 10 friends I have who got new jobs this past year after being laid off. They're getting 10, 30, $50,000 less than they were getting before for the same exact job.
Mhm.
Everything is regional. Of course, that's a regional perspective on a national issue. So I know it's not an absolute, but we all need to start thinking this way. It's important that we all talk to people. When you have friends who are getting new jobs, hey, are you getting, that you don't need to know what they make. Are you getting more or less than you were getting in your last job? I think you will find out that they are getting equal or less than they were getting in their last job 80% of the time. Unless they're an AI, then they're getting 100% pay increase.
Definitely.
Because Larry Ellison and Sam Altman are getting all the money they possibly can from every angle of the world to build our digital prison. Like, that's
Oh
pretty
my
obvious
gosh.
to me.
Yep.
Don't trust those guys at all. Let's get into H-1B visas, because I think this is the overwhelming. First of all, I want to do two things. I want to lay out H-1B visa, what it is, what it was supposed to be, how it actually operates today, because the numbers are massively larger than we're told. And
Mhm.
then I want to get into the other programs that can be used. So H-1B is not the only way to skin the cat. There's like the one, and I'm not a job expert, so I'm leaning on you on this.
Mhm.
Last time I saw, there are at least 5 other programs that do exactly what H-1B is doing under a different code: EB-4,
Mhm.
EB-5. You can pay money to come in. And then we're going to get into the truth behind this $100,000 fee that's being assessed, because it's just fantastic to watch how psyoped and polarized political people are. People not seeking the truth, just seeking to be right. That, oh, I picked the right guy, we're doing it here. You picked the wrong guy, here's what it is. That was a complete deception, in my opinion. It was an appeasement message to the world, and it's not going to have any impact at all on the amount of H-1Bs. Now, of course, after that, social media gets bombarded with like pro-India workers and, all these new stats coming out about, oh, H-1Bs are declining every month anyway. That's not true. I live in a neighborhood with tons of H-1B. I assume, I don't ask them, but I assume H-1B, a ton of people from India who are not from America live in my neighborhood,
Mhm.
and their numbers are growing, and native born Americans are shrinking where I live. So that's my biased opinion. So I don't know if that's true or not. And I want to get to the bottom of that, because nothing angers me more than kids putting themselves $100,000, $200,000 in debt to learn a skill and
Mhm.
then not find a job for a year and a half, while foreigners are taking those jobs at the same rate. They're not even getting paid less. It's the same rate. So let's go through H-1B visa. Let's start with, what is it? How is it being abused?
Yeah, it is being abused. I am not an H-1B expert. I have and I'll be straight up. I've only really been looking at this the past couple months, just what's going on. It's just never been in my realm of what I've kind of always dealt with. But now that I'm getting into it, it is wild. I mean, the H-1B visa is basically, it is that transference of where you can stay and work for X amount of years here in the country. And where it's kind of stemming from is what we're seeing the most amount is, number one, we have these body shops that are putting out ads and bringing in people from other countries, and primarily it's India and China. Those are the two biggest countries.
It's
But we are
80-20
also
there, 80% India and 20% Chinese from my research.
80.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, from what I'd say, I would believe that. And they're bringing them in. But what we are seeing, and this is what I've been looking at a little bit more. What we are seeing is more Indians and Chinese coming in and actually going in through school programs. Now,
Yep.
like Arizona State University is a really big one for a lot of the STEM students, and from what I've heard from a couple of different sources, and I did look this up, and this is true, Amazon does have some programs. Wow, I sound like I'm just dogging on Amazon. This one,
No, go ahead.
they
They
were
should
just
be
in
dogged
my
on.
recent research here. But they have been pulling more OPT students out of there, so that's the visa they're coming over on, so that they can study with the hopes of getting a job through an H-1B visa, and they are getting picked up. And you're having the same US STEM students at the same school going through the same programs not getting hired.
Yeah.
What
And
is that?
the
What is
retort
that?
that I've heard online, because I've talked about this, and I had 63,000 views of a post with like 1,000 comments
Mhm.
calling me racist for saying this.
I know.
If your STEM program was so good in India, why are you coming here to learn? Because we hear, oh, America doesn't have enough STEM graduates or enough talent.
Mhm.
Yeah, we do. This is another narrative spin to bring more foreigners into our country legally. Now, I will state this: are legal immigrants,
Mhm.
which look. My personal opinion is a moratorium on all foreigners for 5 years. Let us breathe. Let
Mhm.
America breathe. Let Americans get jobs and reinstate the American pride in work. But I hear this all the time. We don't have enough STEM graduates. Well, we don't have enough STEM graduates, perhaps because a lot of those all of those certificates or diplomas are going to people from India and China. And
Mhm.
if your programs were so good in those countries and you're so smart, stay there and make your countries better. This is how it works. I mean, first of all, this is an evil program for India by itself. If we are taking all of your top high paid talent from that country into ours, yours is getting worse. Let me just be Captain Logic, common sense. If you can come here and learn things and pay for it and go back, I don't really have that much of an issue with that. International students have always been a thing. Plenty of Americans go to Cambridge and Oxford and stuff like that. It's fine. When you're taking jobs as opposed to diplomas, that's a whole different ball game. So now there are, I think, an L1B program or an L something program where you don't even need to be. It's like twice as fast. Now
Yeah.
here's the weird part, and we're going to get into the H1B $100,000 penalty thing right
Mhm.
now because it's infuriating to me.
Yes.
First of all, people ignore that days before that announcement, which Howard Lutnick lied in, and let's just be honest, Howard Lutnick lied. He tried to do PR spin on something that the next day was published. We all read it. 2 or 3 days before that, there was another announcement from Congress that they were speeding up the H-1B process by
Mhm.
15 months.
Mhm.
So we had that. There was outrage over that. And this is narrative control. So you speed up the process legally. All of you can do your own research and look at what has happened. And then 3 days later, Howard Lutnick does a press campaign or what do you call them? What am I looking at? Press conference
Mhm.
in the White House, sitting next to Donald Trump, and says falsely that this $100,000 penalty, it's going to raise so much money. It's in perpetuity. It applies for all candidates who are here annually. All of those things, except for $100,000 penalty, were false. Those are fake. That was fake. That's fake news. Like, so if we're going to call out fake news, let's call it out regardless of who you voted for. That was a
Mhm.
lie. The real program, break down the real $100,000 penalty for us.
Yeah. So yeah, Saturday I did a weird thing and I just started looking through all this. Everybody was tagging me in this. And and I was just like, okay, yes, I saw it. Friday I was off filming a bunch of shows, so I was not around. I didn't see much. So Saturday morning I woke up. I'm just like, oh my gosh. I mean, I must have had like 50 tags and DMs
It was
about
all of
everything.
Twitter. All of
Yeah,
Twitter was
all over
H1B.
X, and it was just like, okay, let's go through this. So Saturday afternoon, I was a total nerd, and I sat there and I'm reading through the presidential proclamation, and it is a presidential proclamation, not an executive order. And
Correct.
everybody's still calling it NEO. It is not. Totally different. If you want to break them up, an executive order is more policy driven. It has to be voted on. Blah blah blah. It's going to be a bit more enforced. Presidential proclamation is kind of a strongly worded suggestion,
Yes, all it is.
a
It's an
simple way
idea.
of dealing with it. Yeah. So, it is a presidential proclamation. That is what he signed. It's not an executive order, but also they put out the fact sheet. Now, the fact sheet was fun. So, what happened with this whole, we'll get to the fact sheet in a second, but the 100,000, yes, Howard Lutnick said the completely wrong thing. That was not it. What's surprising to me is how fast this just came about. Where like, they had the White House tech dinner just recently.
Yep.
Like, okay, and that was some seriously bad optics, especially I think who was it? Oracle had just laid off like the days before. There's some interesting things going on, but this H1B thing has not been a conversation of the administration really. Yes, we're trying to find American workers, make America great again, all that kind of stuff, but this has not been a big conversation. And then bam, we have this $100,000 fee. Okay, well, this $100,000 fee is negotiable.
Yes.
It actually says that in the proclamation. It can be the Department of Homeland Security can decide to kind of waive the fee, for certain things as long as it's in the, for national interest and the workers are not, security a security problem.
Right.
How much do we think is actually going to happen with all of this? This is a big
0.
nothing. And to everybody on X, it's a nothing burger. It is completely nothing of what's going on. And I saw so many posts going on about, oh, this is going to affect startups. No, startups aren't paying that much for workers. I'm sorry, they're not. I've mentor and advise startups. They don't have that
Startups
kind of
can't
money.
afford that. Yeah.
They
Can't afford it.
don't. There's a few out of Silicon, and and maybe they were working with Y Combinator, and they have big funds coming in, and that is a small fraction. But startups are not hiring H1Bs as a regular. This is not going to affect that. The companies that
Absolutely
are
correct.
using H1Bs are the large corporations. End of. That's where the numbers are. it trickles down a little bit, very small percentage outside of that. So we have this, and then, it's Saturday, Caroline Levitt, the press secretary, she posted, here's actually what we know. This is not 100,000 per person per year, and she kind of like laid it out, but it's still very fuzzy. There's a lot of gray. Nobody actually really knows what's happening or how to deal with it or what's going on with all of this. It's crazy. And I really started going through the fact sheet after reading the proclamation. And the funny thing is there's 4 companies they list, and they don't list them by name. I have now posted about them by name because I know exactly who they're talking about. And they're like, oh, one company laid off 16,000 and then hired, 6,000 H-1Bs. And this company did 27,000 and this company did this. Okay, so the 16,000 is my number that I came out with in July about Microsoft.
Yep.
That was that one. That is not what you see in mainstream media. And I'm fine to say that because I looked at the workforce data, because the numbers and what I reported at the time when we had the layoffs and when the first like big breakthrough kind of went through with July, after they had the 6,000 in May, the 9,000 in July, and I looked back at what had been laid off, the attrition, just any kind of exits out of Microsoft, we're numbering at over 16,000. That was my number. So I'm looking at this, I'm reading this, and the line after that is nearly one of my lines in my posts. And you can see this right on my X. And I was just looking at it, I'm like, okay, so they're reading my stuff. That's cool. The other companies on there, Intel and Amazon, sorry. Intel was the one for Oregon that they mentioned with the 2,400, and Amazon was the 27,000. Now that 27,000 is pretty public. I do speak about that, but that is pretty public knowledge. And the last one, it looks like Salesforce. However, the H-1B numbers do not line up with what I can see just looking through Visa numbers. So that's my best guess on that one. So, but they didn't name it. But I'm going through this just going, y'all are just at the White House tech dinner.
Yeah.
And it just is like, I don't know, makes you grind your teeth a little bit harder. Just, it's frustrating. It's infuriating to see this going on. And no companies are having a crisis over this. And when you break it down, this 100,000, let's just say all of these companies are like, okay, we'll pay the tax. It's like it adds up, and I just took like the top 11 H-1B holders, and again, I've listed this on my X. You got Amazon 3 times, and JP Morgan, and several others, and you add up the top 11 H-1B hirers, companies that are hiring this, and if they hired all of them and they had to pay that tax, it's like 4.2 billion. Okay, they're making trillions.
Yeah, it's
This
peanuts.
is nothing. It's a small tax. It makes no difference to them at all. So it's a fee of doing business. It's pay to play politics. That's
And
what
it's
we're
negotiable.
seeing. Exactly. So it's going to be negotiable because I think the 100,000 is per petition. Again, this is not very clear. It is kind of written like that, but the way both, the press secretary wrote about it, what Letnick said, and just any other person that's really looking into this, we think it's per petition and not per worker they get approved. But, the per petition is definitely going to be waived. Let's think about this. And we have to look at the H-1Bs. They're not problematic. We haven't seen that. So, this whole like, oh, they have to be safe for like, national security. We don't tend to have an issue with that, which is why they get renewals constantly. We don't
know about.
Declines.
We don't have an issue that we know about.
That is true. But we can only go on so many numbers. But it's just, I don't know. Yeah, it's wild. It's nothing. For companies to pay this amount of money, it's nothing.
Well, it's a 12-month program. Like it
Right.
puts in there, it's a 12-month. This isn't like a law change. This is a proclamation, which is a very strong suggestion, which is essentially a nothing burger that doesn't have to be followed. And in fact, Kristi Noem could totally ignore this. She could, by law, she could completely ignore it and allow H-1Bs to go. 1-year program, one-time fee for the next 12 months. That means, yeah, we might get some breathing room for 12 months if it's followed, if it's not negotiated down. But I highly doubt it because the history of H-1B visas does not suggest that. Now, I may be wrong, but the laws I looked to, I just used AI for this. Laws I looked into, the original H-1B program allotted for something like 38,000 H-1B visas per year. That has never been held to. In fact, in 2024, there were 471,000 H-1Bs because there's a clause in the law that allows for specific exemptions, which they use every time, all the time.
Mhm.
And the weird thing is, they don't get paid that much less. You're talking about slivers added up in multitudes that equal decent profitability on the margin. But this isn't like it's not like you're avoiding paying an American 150 and then paying them 35,000. This is like 150 to 142.
Yeah,
These are not
not big numbers.
in many instances they get the same pay that they would offer to an American. So what's the incentive? Explain to me the incentive.
Yeah, I mean, for companies, they know they have a hire that's going to stay there. They're not going to leave. It's too hard for them to leave. They have to find another company to hire them off of that. So that's actually very hard. So they get immediate loyalty.
Hmm,
And we know how much hiring costs, and why pay more if you can have that? So it does make sense. They're not going to complain. And I mean, that's just stuff that I've heard. That's what I've heard from executives as well. They're like, no, this is fantastic. This is what we want. So, it's not about a skill gap. It's
right.
absolutely not. And I will just, argue that to the end of the day. It's not about
No,
that
that's a
because,
ridiculous claim.
yeah,
Like, oh, Americans are too stupid to do the jobs that Americans created. That's
no,
just it's a nothing burger complaint. It's
yeah.
dumb.
And the concepts of like, oh, we're going to bring in other people to train Americans. What is
On
that?
what?
I was,
That's the excuse I heard the other day. Somebody said, "Yeah, we're gonna have to bring in Indians to teach us manufacturing again." Are you kidding? Most of the manufacturing equipment around the world is designed and developed in America. We don't need anyone from outside here to teach us how to do
right.
anything. In fact, we're the consultants for other companies overseas primarily.
Yep. And you also have to remember we have so many stories, and I get this. I get this from people every day where they're having to train their replacement
Yeah.
in India or offshore somewhere. They're training their replacement. So, who's training who? But so the narrative is just wild. It's insane. I just sit here and I'm just like, okay, okay, that's happening. That's one problem we have over here. My concern overall with this, with this visa thing, and just that it's kind of bringing to light, companies are going to pay this. And they're also going to look at this, and they could also just be like, well, okay, we're not going to do that. We're going to try to look completely different. They're going to keep their head count up because they are going to offshore. Or, and this is the more devious one and a little bit more evil sounding, but I want you to think about it this way. I'm going to explain this before I actually say what it is. Think about it. You're a property developer and you see a great piece of property. You see two houses on it, but you want to build a big mega mansion, right? You're going to knock both of those down and you're going to build something bigger.
Hmm.
I'm worried that companies are going to be like, I can get rid of these two employees that maybe make only 100,000 each, and I can bring in an AI specialist as an H1B and pay them and have my big thing, because specialist is now the big thing. And that is also what we are seeing in some of the jobs with H1B. It's not just, call center, which I think a lot of people think it's just these call
Yeah.
center, human resources, admin. It's not that at all. They
No.
are, they are bringing in people outside of America that are these specialists, and especially with AI and tech and things like that. So, are we going to see more Americans get laid off because their jobs are smaller? We're now focusing not on generalist stuff. We just saw this with XAI, and now they're bringing in specialists. Well, I'm not saying that XAI is hiring only H1Bs over that. I'm not saying that at all, but it's that same concept. And we are seeing multiple companies talk about we don't need generalists anymore.
Right.
Well, here in the US, honestly, I will say that because of the way AI has scaled so rapidly, there are few that are specialists. However, when you just you can come in from any other country and you've got basically all you've been trained on is how to be that one specialist for this one thing. It's not that you had to go through this massive schooling. And, we do have companies that are like, don't worry about your schooling. We just want you to be able to do the job.
Yeah.
Well, here in America, students are like, no, you have to go to school, you have to get this degree, you have to go give your time, go be an intern. Well, while that's happening, people are becoming specialists, which is what companies are hiring. And that to me is the evil, scary part that I'm worried about, that I think that we might see more job loss because companies can get rid of regular workers, generalists, so to speak, and hire in more specialists. Well, now, yeah, Americans aren't taught that because schools aren't teaching that over here.
No.
That is a problem.
No, I think you're going to be dead on with that in the end. That is a
Yeah.
very good way to describe it, the generalist versus specialist dilemma.
Mhm.
And just simple questions that Americans need to ask. If is any of this necessary, considering that the best AI platforms in the world are all built in America currently.
Mhm.
The DeepSeek was proven to be a fugazi. Like that was the Chinese play on that, destroyed the market for like 3 hours. Somebody made a lot of money doing it, but it's not as competitive to any of our AI platforms, which are built in America by Americans.
Mhm.
And the Americans who contributed to it would be the most logical specialists to create a better platform.
Mhm.
Now, better platform and higher profitability is a dilemma that corporations, live in, and it's clear what path they take because the only legal binding value that a CEO needs to provide to a company is shareholder value. So they're going to take profitability over platform every time by law. And we find ourselves in this doom loop, this like death cycle of the American worker. And to be honest with you, that Saturday, I was all over your Twitter page on Saturday, because first of all, everyone should learn a lesson right here. This is a great lesson. When something is plastering your Twitter feed, it is generally a psychological operation. Period. There is generally something fake, because the fake news will put out as much heavy lifting as they can, and those who are fighting the fake news, putting out truth, will also do the same and then get priced out of the algorithm eventually, because one has more firepower than the other. So pay attention to that. It's happening like every 4 or 5 days right now, whether you're focused in on the job market, the financial markets, religion, international news,
Mhm.
whatever it is. It's just a bombardment that continually occurs. So when you see that, I was like, all right, I'm going to Amanda's page. I'm going to see what she's saying here. Like right now, I stay out of stuff for 4 or 5 days because I know what's happening. I know that they're trying to sway your mind to believe one thing or the other. And in reality, it's you who needs to make that decision, not general consensus. And consensus is easy to manufacture on social media, period, point blank, especially if you have a lot of money. So
Mhm.
you've done a great job in this. We all owe you
Yeah.
a debt of gratitude for
Oh,
for
thank
doing
you.
this. No, 100%. This is such a tricky thing. Where are we going with all this stuff? From a political standpoint, I couldn't be more angry about H-1B visas, and I don't get angry very often. But I have a 16-year-old who's a junior, so he's young for his age. He's got
Mhm.
1 year left in high school. He has to make a tough decision. Do I go to college and become a bigger debt slave than I was born into, and then try to get a job in a market I can't compete in? Or do I
Mhm.
begin to learn a trade at 18, which I'm advising him to do? Is
Mhm.
learn that trade, start making money, avoid the debt, live free, do your own thing. And I think most Americans in his age group right now are thinking the same thing, because the job market, let's just get into we know the executive market is always bleak. You turn 50 years old, it becomes very difficult if you look 50 years old, because nobody can ask you how old you are.
Mhm.
So if you're old and you look old, for generally speaking, I'm almost 50 to be quite frank, so I don't consider that old. But at 50, you are absolutely priced out of the market. It's difficult to find a job. That's nothing new. That's been this way for 25, 30 years.
Mhm.
I'm more concerned with like the 22-year-old, the 27-year-old, the people who are
Mhm.
building America. And I'm almost certain I heard the other day that age group is now 10% unemployed, or maybe even higher.
Yeah.
What do job prospects for people in that age group look like in the next 12 months?
Yeah, it's hard. I think it's at 10 and a half right now for like the 16 to 24 range. I could be wrong. It might actually be higher. I
No,
think
I,
it
I
might have
think
come
that's
out
what
the
I
other
heard.
day.
Yeah, I
Okay,
think,
okay.
yeah,
It's not good either way you
no.
look at it. Now I have a lot of kids. I have 9 kids.
You
And
have 9 kids?
I have 9 kids, yes.
Well, my business
So
partner has 6. So I'm seeing him right after this. I'm gonna be like, hey, you're priced out of the market, the biggest family in the
slacking.
in
Slacking. Yeah, I had 9 kids before it was cool. My youngest is also a junior, and everybody else is in their 20s. And so our kids live all over the world, actually. So watching what each one of them are dealing with, I, they're lucky. None of them are having any issue with the jobs market right now. They're all doing well. A couple of them are in
Amen.
school, one in aerospace, one in defense, and some have their own businesses. So, and some are just trying to figure out, and they're doing different programs right now. So, between looking at what my kids are doing, and when you're talking, a big span between 20 and 28, there's a lot of stuff going on. Now, when you look at the entire population and all of the kids that are graduating and whatnot, they're not getting hired. And this is becoming faster. I would not be surprised to see this number increase for real, despite what, the BLS puts out or whatever. I would say this is probably closer to 20-25% easy
Wow.
for the 16 to 24-year-olds, even maybe up to like 26, 27, because they're struggling. And if they do have a job, again, this is they're having part-time work.
Yeah.
That's not living. That's not life. That doesn't allow you to be free. That doesn't allow you to pay rent for most kids. They are living at home still. So there's a lot of problems. There's a lot of disconnect. I'm gonna blame colleges. I'm not a fan of college.
Me either.
Yes, if you're gonna go do something super cool, like work with missiles and stuff, or go be a doctor or a lawyer, yeah, you need to learn stuff. But for the most part, especially with these MBAs and people going, oh, I should go back to school to learn leadership skills. No, 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 stop wasting your time, stop wasting your money. That's not what it's about. But I do blame colleges because we still have this problem. It's systemic on what's happening to our younger generation. And I've been a loudmouth about colleges for a long time, and
Me too.
I see college fairs as some of the most predatory things
Mhm.
possible. You go there and they're selling you. They're selling the kids. They're giving them swag and they're selling the kids, and it's like, what is going on? And so yes, there's certain industries that need it, but there's a lot of ways to learn what you need to do, especially now that specialists are becoming a thing. You're not learning that in school, so kids need to think about that, not just trades, but think about what these specialist things are going to look like in the next couple of years. But you know I do blame colleges. Like I said, I think the education system is slowing us up, and they're getting paid to do so, and they're getting paid well. And going back to any of the students that are coming from abroad here, they pay way more in college tuition, and I
Yeah.
don't think most people realize that. I think a lot of people, this is just my opinion, but I think a lot of people believe that they're just coming in because they're doing it from a diversity standpoint. They want to have X amount of students from different countries. No, they're
No,
actually
it's money.
paying handsomely to go
Yeah.
to schools here. And it's not every college that is big on that, but enough of them. Okay. And we are seeing that whether they're coming on that OPT program or they're just coming here for school, they are paying handsomely. So colleges are making bank. Okay. They always have. They're the very fact that they were
They're
crying and
scams.
screaming about getting their funding pulled. I'm like, really?
Charlie Kirk was right.
Really? Yeah. So
College is a scam.
it is. And, so we have a problem. And, so I think it's smart for parents like you that are, telling your kid, to go learn trades. That is smart. We have to start thinking outside of the box. And,
Mhm.
whether it's to start your own business, whether it's to learn a specialty of some sort, whether it's tech or anything else, we have to start giving them the tools to do that and not keep pushing towards education. And I really do feel like colleges are going to start folding a bit. They can't all survive,
Right.
when they're crying about their funding and we give in and give them some. It's like, what?
Like, what?
you know,
Why?
let
Right?
let Darwinism take its place.
Absolutely, yeah. We have
Regardless.
way there's, like, where I live, I'm just north of Dallas, so the big college here is Austin. That's 3.5 hours away. This is just a small area. We have 4 colleges in this immediate area that are filled with people who are paying thousands of dollars a year for a job they're not gonna get. That's just the simple reality. I mean, I went to college. I was an athlete in college. I didn't pay for all of it. But at the same time, I don't use a single thing daily that I learned in college. I use common sense that I learned in the business world to do exactly what I'm doing.
Yep.
So yeah, to me, college is let them fail. Let them fail
Mhm.
fast and hard too. Like the
Mhm.
students won't even care. There's no loyalty to a school anymore. I mean, people transfer all the time and move to different college. Even athletes don't stay there. They transfer for money now too.
Yeah.
That was another bailout too, because the colleges get a cut of that NIL money.
Mhm. They
Um,
do. They do. So yeah, keep them for college football and entertainment. Okay, that's fine.
yeah,
But let's stop thinking that college is actually helping our younger generations, because it's
right.
not. And the very fact that companies are hiring STEM grads and other graduates from the same schools that the OPT visa
Yep.
students are coming over on. And don't get me wrong, they're talented and they've learned the same. But the very fact that companies are skipping past our students that are going to debt and are doing all of this, that's a tragedy.
Yeah.
And I'd like to say that has to stop and get really angry about it, but they're not going to, because
No.
at the end of the day, it's money,
Yeah.
and it's a cost discipline, and that's how they're going to keep doing it. And all of the laws, even if this 100K thing was an executive order, again, it's a drop in the ocean.
And it's
Paying
still not a
100,000
law.
is pennies. Is
Until
pennies.
Congress passes it, it doesn't matter.
Exactly.
Executive
Exactly.
orders have been ignored for 50
Oh, yeah.
years. I mean, the
Oh, yeah.
executive orders are not laws, guys. Mandates are not laws.
Yeah.
Those are decrees, right? They're
Yeah.
things that you're suggested to do strongly. It's a strong suggestion.
Yeah,
Until
and there's
Congress does something about H-1B visas, they are going nowhere. And you can throw a price tag on it all day as a deterrent or a way to slow down the flow, but
Mhm,
that flow isn't stopping. Look where you live. Now, not everyone will have this issue, but I talk to a lot of people from around the whole country, and the whole country is like out of nowhere in the last 4 years, just an explosion of Indian and Chinese people here legally,
mhm,
right? So we kind of need to rethink the and think of the narrative plot twist. We just had all these illegals, so people are like, what was the term? Oh, if they were here legally, I wouldn't care, right? That
mhm,
was what we were taught to say. That was the training mechanism. Well,
mhm.
I'll be the one who says this. I care. 5-year moratorium on all foreigners, let America breathe, and then restructure all these models. And you want to bring in the best of the best in a competitive environment?
Yeah,
No problem with that at all.
exactly.
But right now, the faucet is on, and there and the knob is broken. There's no way to turn it off. So
Yeah.
until Congress does something, this will always be an issue. Now, until Congress does something about all of these bureaucracies like the BLS and all these other places, nothing will change there either.
Mm-mm,
But I really want to get your opinion. And I haven't been following this stuff for maybe as long as you have. I
mhm.
don't remember a time where any agency went dark ever,
No,
ever. What in the
no.
hell is going on here, Amanda?
I don't know. Well, I wish I knew. I mean it wasn't a shock firing, but it was just a random one day. Okay, out. She's out. That whole firing that went on with BLS and everything. I'm not surprised. It's not the narrative that the administration wants to play, and facts are facts. When you look at the workforce data behind the scenes, I don't care what the unemployment rate is. Nobody cares what the unemployment rate is if they're not finding the jobs. And
Right.
when you look at the workforce data, it doesn't matter what it is for, the 35 to 45 year olds. Nobody cares about what that exact unemployment rate is. So the very fact that they're going dark, they're going to try to come up with something else. The very fact that the Chicago Fed came out with their really, really weak ta-da, it just doesn't really give you a lot of hope for BLS. But, at the end of the day, after everything that's gone on with all of this, who's going to believe it?
Right.
Who's going to believe the BLS numbers? Handful of media is going to be talking about it, and those that aren't kind of in the know with it, they're just going to go okay, because at the end of the day, nobody cares. They just want jobs. We want to work. Americans want their jobs back, and that is what we're focused on. So it doesn't matter if they go dark forever.
Right.
It tells you a lot. It speaks volumes, but that data, without it being accurate, is not going to do anything. And even to know that data, all it's going to do is allow commentary. Well, you
Right.
can find commentary from looking at other data. You don't need that at the end of the day. Like, I don't use that for anything that I do. I don't ever look at government data. I know people are just like, wait, what? How do you do your numbers? It's not about that. You have to look directly, and I focus company level first. Then when I see this weird like anomaly, I'll bring it out and pull it into a more industry level and go, okay, why is there this common denominator of what's going on? And then you go down all these rabbit holes and you figure out what's going on, and then you tie it up and you just overlay all these companies industry by industry, and you look at it and go, oh, this is what's happening. You do not need government numbers for that. It's
Right.
all right there. It's all right there in the data. And then we have to realize, are we totally believing, the workforce numbers? That's also hard. Companies are getting more and more clever. I mean, just look at their earnings calls.
Oh yeah, the
Yeah,
sneaky words and the
just
freezing of
yeah,
things. It's
yeah,
so it's so everything is so scammy.
it is.
Like we just
I
live in a gigantic scam.
Yeah, I love listening to earnings calls because I'm a speechwriter as well. That's like my whole past before. So, that play on words, the psychology, and really focusing on, when you can there's certain words, and like when you look at like behavior modification and watching how people speak, it's interesting to listen to the words because you can actually hear it in their voice. So you actually know what their face is saying just by how they speak those words. And when they're doing these really odd buzzwords, like specialist is coming in, specialization and restructuring, that's what it used to be. Now it's
Yeah.
now we need specialists. When you hear the CEOs and the CFOs on the call saying that, you can almost see what their face is doing. You can hear it. And so, I'm just sitting there and I listen for that, and I listen for where they sound like they're cringing saying something, because oh, there you go. That's what's not actually happening.
Yep.
So, I go in and try to really decode that and then pull it against my numbers and the data, their hiring, their exits, and it never adds up. So it's all out there, but yeah, I love earnings calls. They're so much fun. But I also like watching
Obfuscation.
Parliament. So
Obfuscation is as dangerous as lying. Like, let's
mhm.
call it what it's okay. Let's just call everything the way it is.
Yep.
All of us just want if we all had the truth, I think we would all be able to deal with it, and we would all be able to come to some sort of conclusion together and a solution for all of this stuff.
Mhm.
But if we just continually get lied to or obfuscated, the truth is constantly obfuscated, then we don't know what we need to fix and we don't know how to get there. And this punishes the next generation who has no assets, who have no money, who have no prospect. There is if you're 28 years old and 30 and under right now, your chances of owning a home are something like 14% at our current pay. I mean, it's just,
Wow.
and owning a home, like, who cares about owning a home? Let's talk
Mhm.
about liquidity. Will you have enough money to live a good life right now? And I don't think anyone can answer that and say yes.
No.
Lots of things need to change. And thanks to people like you, we're getting information like this so we can have arguments with people who believe the nonsense we're being told from Washington, D.C., which has always been nonsense. We're just starting to see the ramifications of years and years and years of lying. And eventually lies are completely outed.
Mm.
And you are part of the process. So am I. So, which
Yep.
means we're hated by some people and loved by others. And that's fine. You can hate all you want. You can be a provocateur of anything you want and try to bleed people into stupid conversations. They're all a waste of time. You're being lied to. That hasn't changed, and we all need to figure out our stuff. So, Amanda, we can't thank you enough for taking the time to do. I know you'd love to do it, but it
Yeah.
means a lot to a lot of people to try to get somebody who says, "Hey, here's what's really happening with the actual data," and then compare it to what we're given. And it is yet, since I followed you, it is yet to match up. But what it does match up with is my view of the world and all the people I talk to all across the country. That's what I listen to at this point in time, not government officials protecting their job in a political party. I'm just not doing that anymore, and no one should. Stop
Yeah.
partaking in political parties. They're both retarded. They're both leading you into bad directions. We need to break apart from politics and politicians and start worrying about actual policy, because that's what's killing us. And we're supporting it with a red hat on or a blue hat on. And it doesn't make any sense to me at all while we continue to do this. So, Amanda, thank you so much for this information. Always great to have you on. We'll have you on in a couple months again. I can't wait for your show to launch. Let
Yeah.
everybody know where they can follow you, and tell us about this new show as we close out.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thank you. This is always great. I'm always game for this because
Yeah.
it's so much to talk about. But yeah, you can catch me right on my website, thejobchick.com, or you can go to Insider Edge Report. That is my Substack, and just insideredgereport.com. And my new show, Insider Edge Live, it actually goes live Friday. So it's basically me for an hour talking about the trading and how to make better trades just based on workforce. I've been doing this for about 10 years now, and it works. It
Where's
works.
that going to be launched?
InsiderEdgeLive.com. So
Nice.
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
self-broadcasting. Love it.
It is. Yes, definitely. So yeah, it's fun. I love what I do, and it's all around the workforce. So, and with so many more individuals that have been laid off starting to trade because they can't find jobs, I'm like, let's go do this and make money off these companies.
Yeah, we got to gamble. Everybody's got to gamble when the
Yep.
chips are down. You got to put them all in. That's
Right.
the attitude of America right now.
Mhm.
Sports betting's at an all-time high. Day trading's at an all-time high. Those are not signs of a strong economy. Those are signs of looting the treasury and a fallen empire. Those are what those signs are.
Yeah.
So, Amanda, God bless you. Thank you for coming on. God
Yeah.
bless you all. Thanks for watching the Rice Report, and we'll see you next time. Have a good one, everybody.